Welcome to NectarTV. This is our first podcast, and today we're going to talk contact centers, and we're going to do a little follow-up to our recent webinar about reclaiming the customer experience excellence. Today, our guests are Tim Armstrong and Hess Yavari. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you, Stephen. Good to be here.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
So why don't we kick off this with having you guys tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and where you guys have come from. Tim, let's start with you.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to the discussion. My name is Tim Armstrong. I'm the Vice President of Product here at Nectar. So I lead our product management team across the portfolio. I've been with Nectar a little over 4 years, but I've spent my entire career for the most part in the collaboration, UC, voice and video space. 10 years of which was at Microsoft, where collaboration took a much broader term. But otherwise, that's been my background.
Cool.
Hess
Yes.
Yavari, Customer Experience Director here at Nectar. Been around for about a year, concentrating my background's mainly around contact center, building contact centers and upgrading and migrating. Started out as an engineer, then moved right the way towards product, and yeah, that's exactly what my background is.
All right, cool. So based on our webinar that we had, Hess, you're kind of the man of the hour here. So tell us, what's the restrictions in COVID been like in your area of the world? Where are you from?
So I'm from London, UK. It was pretty bad a few weeks back, but now restrictions have lifted. There's a bit more freedom. We can go out, and I think things are getting back to normal, as they say, which is great.
That's cool. Have you
Yeah,
ventured out
certainly
at all?
same.
Are you going to eat at places or?
Yeah, well, not yet. Let's see what happens. You
Right.
never know. The second wave may come about. So let's see what happens.
Right. I know here we're wearing, a lot of us are wearing masks, especially when we try to go out. What's been interesting for us is that we've been to a couple of places to shop, and their shelves are almost empty because they haven't resupplied some of the retail places. Tim, what's it like in Washington?
Yeah, up here in Washington State, I think it's in our county. We've been able to lift some of the restrictions, but like Hess, I think our personal family take has been to take it slow and be cautious. But yeah, obviously it feels great to see things opening back up again. We're still mostly sticking to takeout and supporting folks as much as we can here locally, but.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, what I've said about the whole thing is I've been working from home for years, so my day-to-day life doesn't actually feel too different. It didn't feel too different during COVID, COVID almost feels like not old news, but it's certainly it's still impacting our industry a lot. But yeah, we're pretty used to it at this point.
Right. I think the biggest change for us has just been on my kids and my wife. I've been working home safe for years, right? So it wasn't a big change for us. But so for sure. So with those kind of restrictions, when we talk about contact centers, because that's one of the things we wanted to kind of discuss. I know there's obviously challenges for contact centers that were, that they had before COVID, and there's going to be challenges for contact centers after COVID. So with your background, Hess, what kind of challenges were these guys having, before this even started?
So one of the biggest challenges was to upgrade platforms, to transition customers from old legacy systems to new high-tech, cutting-edge platforms. So migrations have been and upgrades have been really, really slow, and getting contact center agents used to working differently has been a huge task. And also getting customers, clients, people who call in, the actual public that interface with these contact centers to change their behavior and make it a lot more efficient has always been a challenge. So then COVID hit, then
Right.
that behavior accelerated. So
Yeah.
previously, you have in contact centers, you have a lot of people that would work from offices and offices only, because that was the norm for the last 20 or 30 years. But then once COVID hit, nobody would be working from an office for obvious reasons. So working from home should have been a norm. People's behaviors and practices needed to change very rapidly. And also customers who would call in to speak to somebody, they would have to understand that actually the service may not be as good as it was previously, and contact centers need to improve very, very quickly, add those applications and services to really be able to give a better customer experience to the public.
Right. So what's some of those, you talk about behaviors and stuff, and customers getting used to some new behaviors. Are there some new trends for contact centers and the way an end user would, say, interface with those contact centers that they haven't done before?
Well, actually, it'll be an uptake of usage. So previously, there'll be a lot more phone calls, probably less phone calls, more multi-channel. The use of multi-channel and social would have increased. But then again, it all depends on the demographics and what age group you're in. So if you're in the over 60s and you're a vulnerable person, you'll probably end up panicking. You don't know how to use social media. You really need to contact people, so you would pick up the phone and make those calls. If you're a younger millennial, you would actually use more of the chat, social media aspects to get in touch.
Right.
So
I know I've had to call a few contact centers during all this, and I think I've used chat a lot during these. And it's interesting because when you use the chat function, they're trying to make it, you can tell they're trying to make it very seamless between chat and actually talking to somebody, because a lot of the sessions will start with the chat function and then transition where they'll call you and then continue to work. So I'm seeing some outbound, right, where they call me based on the chat.
Yeah, and also what they would do is integrate artificial intelligence with these bots and chats to be able to reduce interaction with a real person. So be able to service more people, more members of the public, using less actual agents. So, and it's getting better and better as contact centers and AI develops, more automation is used, and more intelligence is put into the engine, so it becomes a lot more seamless.
So when you talk about it being, one of the tough parts is upgrading these contact centers and getting some of this new stuff in. What the tech behind the scenes? What are they really feeling there? What's some of those things that are really causing that to be a challenge?
Well, a rapid migration to the cloud, getting rid of your on-premise system because they cannot handle home working agents. Moving them across to the cloud. Usually, a project like that will take anywhere between 3 months and maybe 2 years, depending on the complexity and the kind of business you are. If you're a bank, it'll probably take you 2 years to transform your whole organization from one tech to another. But we're seeing the transition happen in a matter of days and maybe a week or two, which is so quick, so fast. And I think it's too fast. And so the customer experience from the public drops. The metrics get thrown out the window. So the metrics the SLAs don't matter anymore. It's move across, be forced to move across and use a new tech and get ready. And it's forced adoption.
I mean, you see things like, I've even been on Amazon and take headsets, for example. They're sold out everywhere, right? Because these guys are, they're trying
headsets,
to, they're trying to get these guys, right? They're trying to get them ramped up as quickly as possible. And I'm assuming that not just the transition to the cloud, but the environments themselves are different. I mean, you can control, for the most part, a corporate office environment. But when the internet comes into play from home offices, I mean, the challenge there has got to be, exponential, because you're talking thousands of home workers, thousands of different environments.
Yeah, absolutely. And those agents, those personnels will probably need to VPN into an organization's infrastructure. So, can the infrastructure hold up? Can they not? And there's a question of productivity. So how productive are people at home, working from home? And you got kids in the background, you've got cats and dogs, pets.
Yeah.
Are they used to being disciplined, sitting at your desk? I know most people in the IT industry, I know I am, and yourselves, we're pretty used to working from home, but
Right.
some of the other contact center agents, I don't believe they're that used to working from home. They'll go into the office at 9 o'clock, leave at 5 o'clock, and those are the hours of the contact center. Any outside of the hours, then the automation takes hold. So they can leave voice messages, then different forms of messaging could get collected, like emails and voicemails.
Are you hearing anything from customers who still are as they're trying to transition from the on-prem solutions, right, to the cloud? I've even seen some reports lately where you can look at the call trend lines, and the most interesting reports are the ones that come from utilization at the edge. And their edge utilization has gone from, kind of hanging to, you watched in March where it went through the roof.
Yeah.
How are these companies, how are the edges holding up?
Yeah, pretty bad.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why the edges increase, some of the legacy contact center platforms, they enable home working. And when you enable home working, all the calls go into the edge, into the organizations, and then back out again. So you're actually having double the amount of calls,
Right.
and double the amount of utilization. So, really, they've not been tested. So,
Yeah.
For any organization out there, you really need to go in and test and make sure that your platform, your system is coping with, a situation like the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I think I saw one report where it was even worse than that. They were hanging around about 1,000, around 1,000 concurrent calls at the edge before COVID hit, and after March, you just saw it ramp to 5,000 to 6,000, users coming in at that edge. It was, you're looking at a 300 or 400% increase, and
yeah, it's not surprising.
Yeah, it's really affecting that. So, you talked a little bit about that transition to the cloud. Is that something where companies are trying to run, the on-prem and the cloud simultaneously? Are they trying to go just all in for parts of their environment? Like, what is that? What's that been?
Well, it depends on the industry. So if it's, for example, local authorities, they would probably transition everything to the cloud because they can, and they don't know how many agents they're going to have, from 1 minute to the next. But then when you involve the financial institutions, they always will need on-premise systems because of regulation, compliance reasons. So there will always be that hybrid. So a lot of the financial institutions will have a hybrid system and utilize the cloud as an overflow, or for any pandemic that happens, just such as COVID.
Right.
And then others are they go full blast cloud.
Right. So talking about the cloud, and I'm sure you've also had discussions not only with the companies that need the cloud solutions, but what about our providers? How are they holding up with going from here to here, overnight?
Yeah, you can actually see, like, not naming any names, but service providers that have only recently released cloud contact center, and they've got a roadmap of 3 to 4 years, because they predicted in normal times the adoption to get from A to B will take 3 or 4 years. It's actually accelerated. So over a course of a week, they've had to onboard 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 home working agents.
Mm-hmm.
So their plans have accelerated too. So a lot more investment, or what they did plan to invest in the infrastructure that they had, has come forward.
Mm-hmm. I've seen things like servers being sold out because they're trying to ramp data centers, right, to support spinning up more VMs as quickly as they can possibly spin them up to support the load.
Yeah, not surprising. Yeah, absolutely.
So, so as customers are trying to make this transition, I know that one, the product that's obviously near and dear to your heart, right, is CX Assurance. And,
Yes.
as customers are, it's not just customers at times, the service providers are also trying to make sure that the customers that the customers they're supporting, everything is functioning as it should. And it's not always about performance, making sure things are, running and the calls are good, but there's more to contact centers. And I think that's one thing that CX Assurance really helps. And if you could kind of, go into how that's going to help them make that transition to make sure their contact center, calls are routing the way they're supposed to, et cetera.
Yeah, because you gotta think contact center is a mix of multiple different applications working as one to facilitate the public. And each of those applications are implemented by a different business, but they've all got to work as one. So what you have to do is simulate a customer, test it, carry out functional testing, carry out regression testing. As you migrate from on-premise to the cloud or one system to another, make sure everything is functioning as it should. And also it kind of like helps you progress that project and move that project along a lot faster by testing and signing off the projects. And giving you that assurance that actually everything is going to work on day one.
Right.
Because you never know, unless you test thoroughly and at scale, you've got no idea what's going to happen once you go live or you start taking real customer calls.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me about what, people are going to kind of want to know an example of that, right? So if I'm a contact center guy and I'm wanting to functionally test, walk me through like some great examples that you guys you've had, right, and seen in some customer environments.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of a customer interaction with a business. A customer would call in and they would hit a IVR call flow, which is like a banking application. They'd put in their 5-digit, 16-digit account number. And now they're expecting a response with the bank balance.
Mm-hmm.
And coupled with that, you have a callback application. So when a customer's in the queue, they get offered a callback. Similarly, with some banking applications, they get the voice biometrics offerings where you can pass security by using your voice print. So those are 3 different applications that need to work. Now, if a pandemic hits or a sudden migration needs to happen very, very quickly, and all those applications need to go from a legacy on-premise system to the cloud, you need to be able to benchmark and test what you had, and then undertake that migration and then test again. Make sure it's working, and then carry out a performance test. So on the scale, is it holding up? How is it holding up? Is it failing? Do you get bad experience? You get jargled voice? Do call drop? What happens? It gives you a real insight and get a real insight of what's happening.
Right. So it's not only, where we have products that can monitor the infrastructure and call flow in the back end for just sheer voice quality, but also the interfacing with the application itself. How is it, if I'm hitting a button and I need to go here, I'm actually getting there and not accidentally routed back to the wrong thing.
Yeah. I mean, you can monitor all the CPU, RAM, servers you like, but the way the application is behaving to a customer is completely different. And the only way to test it is to act as the customer.
Right. So is CX Assurance platform specific? What does it actually interface with as far as vendor?
So it's actually vendor agnostic. So it can interface with any of the major vendors out there, Genesis, Cisco, Avaya, Teams, Microsoft, it doesn't really know, Amazon Connect, any of those. It's literally simulating a person, whether it's omni-channel, web chat, call-in, interfacing with IVR, it doesn't matter. It's all about testing, testing the flow, the business flow that the businesses, companies are providing their customers.
Gotcha. And you talked a little bit about scale. So what do we, if someone's saying, okay, well, that's great, I can test this, but what's your guys' definition of scale? Because you have different, customers at different levels.
Yeah, different customers, different levels. You got large companies that can take, 30,000, 50,000 concurrent calls into the platform, scaled infrastructure, multi-site. And so what we would effectively do is say, okay, if an event is going to happen and they're getting prepared for an event and they're expecting 50,000 concurrent calls within a given time, then we could test for that. What happens if we simulate before the actual event? So we would carry out a performance test and then see what the experience is, see what happens. Do things break?
So if I'm a new person coming in and I need to, we're obviously in an environment where we need to transition quickly. If I'm somebody coming in and I want to get this thing implemented, what's the time frame look like? Is this, how long would it take to spin up these kind of tests?
It's a very quick, but it depends on your requirement. A performance test with 10,000 concurrent calls, you can do it in 5 days turnaround. Or carrying out a functional test or monitoring the customer experience, you can do that within half a day. So you can get up and running within half a day. It's very quick.
So I think it's important to note too that you don't just run these things at the beginning and then you're done, right? I mean, this is something you want to look at both as I'm spinning something up and then continuing to monitor to make sure it's still functioning.
Absolutely. You want to run tests all the time, periodically, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes. You want to know if you had a problem before your customers do. You do not want to have, as a business, you do not want your customers to have a bad experience. Bad experience leads to, revenue loss, customers leaving. You want to increase, get a better customer experience to increase revenue.
Is this something where if I'm someone coming in, obviously at first maybe I need to do a big ramp, right? Because I'm going to be transitioning, and then I might need to scale back as I'm, an ongoing monitoring of the product. Is that something where CX Assurance allows you to ramp, and then maybe you don't need that big ramp? 6 months from now, you might want to ramp again and do a load test. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we can carry out, we can provide multiple load tests throughout the year, maybe every quarter. You want to make sure that your platform is working as it should, so we can provide you with a number of ports for you to execute within those periods of time.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I mean, I think we've covered quite a bit here. Is there kind of any final thoughts on the market and where we're going? And I just want to go eat out at a restaurant like a normal person at some point.
yeah, as do I. I want to call a few restaurants and make sure I can get through and order a pizza.
Right. I think I'm on a first name basis with my delivery guy right now. We've become best friends, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Tim, you got anything you want to leave us with today?
No, I mean, I think that, what we've covered here, really the key points around what's happening now, for people that are interested in learning more about what we can do with customer experience testing, as well as some of the monitoring, diagnostics, and just contact center analytics. Certainly we'll make sure you have that contact information here. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly exciting time with a lot of transition right now happening in our industry. Everything that that everyone thought was going to happen with the slow adoption of cloud changed overnight.
Yes, it did.
And whenever that happens, that amount of disruption certainly is something that I think people are still kind of trying to figure out how to grapple with. And and automation of testing, all the way through from the IVR experience through to the application integration. It can be a massive time saver.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think what we'd like to leave with, Tim, we've got some more webinars coming up, don't we? What's on the horizon here?
Yeah, we do. So we're gonna be covering a variety of topics. The topic that we're gonna cover next time is going to be around Microsoft Teams and advanced troubleshooting around Microsoft Teams. Much like in the contact center space, the general voice and video collaboration or unified communication space is also massively transitioned to the cloud. Microsoft Teams and Zoom are two platforms that have gone from kind of tertiary brand experiences that people didn't really know about to household names in a matter of weeks. And so in the enterprise space, Microsoft Teams has certainly been a very popular platform for people to transition to. And again, just like contact center migrations that were planned for 18 months are basic, they basically happened overnight, and now people are trying to figure out how to support those environments. So what we're going to tee up next is talk a little bit about troubleshooting call quality issues in a Microsoft Teams environment.
That sounds great. I think we'll have another podcast around that following up on some of those webinars. So
forward to it.
Yeah, look forward to it. Well, thanks, Hess.
All right, no
Appreciate
worries.
it. Thanks, Tim.
Take care.
All right, guys.
Always.
That's all for today. Thanks for joining our NectarTV talk, and we'll catch you in the next one.